So Talk in the Town is a very simple platform that we're trying to create, where we identify various actors, institutions, change makers, people who are passionate about their own cities, and try to bring the stories that they have created in their towns. And sometimes it's not just rooted in just one city. It has a pan-India influence, and it has an influence on thinking of people. And in that realm, we also, I think we are running a writing contest right now with the theme of My City, My Fun. And the idea, and this is our fifth year running of this contest. And the idea was that we try to encourage the youth to reimagine that what fun and leisure could mean in their cities. And if they were to organize a fun fair, what all could it have? And while thinking about it, we thought that the idea of fun and leisure has changed over time. And traditionally, even when we were kids, especially in the kind of season we are looking at right now, summers were known for our indoor games. And so we first thought about circus, then we also thought about board games that we grew up with. And that's how we landed upon the amazing work that you've been doing.
What's the
So
board game
I
you
will
played?
very briefly introduce. We played Snake and Ladders. We played Chaucer. We used to play some games. I think I saw the ones that you have improvised now, and I read the multiple names in different languages and different places. I think which is the precursor of Ludo, also, if I'm not wrong. And of course, there were other more Western games also, but they were Indianized version of those games. The Monopolies version of Vyapar, and like there were other smaller games as well, like which you would get in a small city like Rishikesh. But of course, chess and carom and a lot of these games also were there. But the diversity that I saw on your blog, of course, that much I have not come across anywhere else. So
We
I
have
look
put
forward to.
Pan India, we put them together.
Yes, correct. That's what I was reading about. So I'll quickly introduce both of you. G Singh is a prominent art collector and cultural revivalist who is based in Mysuru. And he was captivated by traditional Mysuru paintings from a very young age. And he built a very impressive collection and commissioned new works, which nurtured the Mysuru style. As the Honorary Secretary of Ramsons Kala Pratishtana, he's been instrumental in reviving traditional Indian arts, organizing iconic exhibitions like Bombay Mane and Krida Kaushalya. And since 2000, he, along with Raghu, who is also with us today, and Dr. Dileep K.C.R. Gowda, he's been researching traditional Indian board games and teaching them to thousands through workshops. He's also co-authored books such as Indian Traditional Board Games, A Guide to Art of Play, and Thanjavu's Gilded Gods. And he also established the Ram Singh Museum of Mysore paintings and the Kala Devi Doll Museum in memory of his parents, which contributed significantly to the Mysore's cultural landscape. And we also have S Dharmendra, known as Raghu, who is an art historian, curator, and designer based in Mysore. He holds a postgraduate degree in computer application from Mysore University and also an MFA in art history. He also works at the Ramsons Kala Pratishtana, where he is responsible for designing artifacts, dolls, traditional game boards, and more. He also heads the RKP's research section, which focuses on traditional Mysore paintings, dolls, and Indian indoor games. And I think along with G Singh, he's been the co-author of the Indian Traditional Board Games, A Guide to the Art of Play, and Mysore Chitra Siri, which contributed significantly to the documentation revival of traditional arts. And he also lectures at the Chamarajendra Government College of Visual Arts in Mysore. So with that, I welcome both of you, and also thank you for taking out time to speak to us. My first question is actually about introduction only. So I tried to capture briefly, but it will be wonderful if you could tell us about your incredible journey of reviving the board games and how did you start it?
About almost 24, 25 years back, that is in year 2000, Mr. Singh, he always had this question in the mind that in olden days, what was the thing that usually people did to pass time? So nowadays we have a mobile, TV, radio, but in olden times, what was the thing they did to kill time or pass time? So that was the question in his mind, and that led one thing to another. And as when we were kids, we also used to play these board games. I remember I was taught Pagade, that is Pachisi, by old lady who lived upstairs in my house. And she also taught me Mankala Aligulimane, or Palamuli, as it is called. And when I tried to buy these games in the market, they were not available. And what that old lady had were beautiful board games. And when I started working in Ramsons, I found these beautiful artifacts, handicrafts, and I asked Mr. Singh, why aren't we getting these board games anymore? So that question, and already a question in his mind about these pastimes, they both came together, and we thought these board games are not available anywhere. So why don't we get them made? It was first, it was a selfish motive for ourselves, and then these board games came out so beautiful that we thought, why not we, since we have a store, why not we market them and let people also get these beautiful board games. So that's how it started.
I have been collecting Mysore style paintings from 1987. So I came across a lot of these paintings which had an image on one side, and which was actually, some of them were hand painted, and on the other side there were board games, and they belong to the period of Krishnaraj Vadeyar III, who ruled Mysore, and he ruled Mysore between 1799 and 1868. And I found these beautiful specimens of game boards. And many people did not know what they were. They thought these were yantras or magical incantations. But somehow, when I read the legends, I knew that these are board games. And it is only later that I came to know that this particular king, the 22nd Maharaj of Mysore, was not only a very well-known person in the world of board games, he had also improvised certain games that were there, and also had invented certain games that on his own he had invented, that is very ingeniously, and got them painted. And that is how that was my first brush with board games. And then, of course, as Raghu said, the whole idea was, how do we merge this gaming tradition with the craft tradition? Since my father ran this craft store, it was quite easy for us to, get the craftsmen, identify the particular game board or the particular craft form, and see if it actually blends or lends itself to the of making the game board or making the pawns. And in the beginning, we found it quite challenging, and later on we were quite comfortable doing it. And today we are working with 30 craft clusters across India where these board games are being made.
Any favorite of yours within these board games that you both individually like a lot, which you either discovered while you were doing this journey? Because I read that you also traveled extensively to identify some of these board games to various villages and towns. So
yes, because there was not much of textual or written references, and most of them that were there were written by non-Indians.
Okay.
So now they had actually identified the board games, then they had written the simple rules how these board games were played, and also they had listed out these board games which were played across India. And I think this was perhaps done by serious research by anthropologists. And of course, it remained there in those books. But when we went in search of, how to play these board games, or what are the pawns and the dice required, we hit a wall.
Okay.
And then then we had to revert back to Krishna Rajavadeyar's research. And we went to the Institute of Kannada Studies in Mysore, belonging to the University of Mysore. There we found a book, Chaduranga Chakra, which had all these things noted down in Kannada language.
That you translated.
So it was very easy for us to, many of the games, majority of the games were already properly drawn, catalogued, the color coding was done, and also the simple rules how to play were already written.
Wow.
And this was done in around 1840s to 1860s.
Okay.
So our job was half done.
But one problem was there in that manuscript was those rules or those instructions, they were quite dated.
Okay.
So, it was not being played contemporarily. So what we had to do was we had to look for people who played these games today. So when we went to different places, we usually, when we go to a place, for business, we will keep a couple of days for ourselves. We look around, move around, and we usually visit temples or river fronts. In these places, if the temple is old and they have these paved the floors paved with stone. There, earlier people would have etched these board games and played on these game patterns. So when we were photographing, the localites would be very interested and ask us, "You're not photographing the temple, instead you're photographing the floor." And they were intrigued, and we interacted with them, and we said that these are game boards. Do you know how to play? So since using that interaction, they will come sit play with us and teach us newer version and the correct version of the game, and the local variety, the local names of these games. So we noted all these and come back to our office and redo the whole playing instructions and include it in our catalog.
Wow. Sounds extremely fun, documenting all this fun.
I would be photographing and RG would be interacting with them because he's great with people. So he will keep them engaged and speak with them and play with them. And he will intentionally not win. We will let them win because that will give them more kind of this thing. They will be energized and they will talk and they will interact more then.
True. In fact, when you just mentioned about this winning, while I was preparing, I remembered this ironic part of Monopoly as a game, that when Monopoly was designed, originally the person who designed the game was she designed a version which was not supposed to be a monopolistic game. It had an anti-monopolistic stance that people could actually incentivize not having monopolies. But over time, the idea of monopoly and being very competitive took precedence, and it completely evolved into a game which supported such competition. So I wanted to ask you that you've documented and you've researched so many olden games also. And then you've, of course, seeing how some of them are manifesting today. Then there are the games of today as well, which are much more recent. So do you see some sort of difference or similarities in what created these games, why these games were designed in the older times? whether they were for cooperation, whether they were for general social entertainment or educational. So do you see a difference between these games, or maybe what is your thinking that why these games were there at that time? What role did these games play in the roles in the lives of communities and people?
Now, if you look at Snakes and Ladders, the original version, it was a game in which it looked very simple. You are just rolling the dice and moving the pawns. So now it had a deeper meaning of your merits and demerits. The karma theory was at play when you rolled out the Snakes and Ladders. Now, what you see today is a very simple version. It just has numbers. Earlier, each of the boxes had either a virtue or a vice. And now, where the snake bit you, it usually had a vice. Means it said gambling, and it brought you down to number 6 from 55. Then sometimes there is a ladder, and it said you helped an person to get educated. Then you have a ladder where you climb up. So earlier it was a game of morality. Now it is just a game of numbers. And when you play, say, Pachisi, now this is a race game. In a very simple context, it's a race game. You have 4 arms, and each arm has 24 boxes. And the 25th box, where you have to, traverse through all the boxes and get inside, that's the 25th box, which is the Pachiswa box. So that is how the word Pachisi comes from. Because you have traversed all the 24 boxes and got into the winning 25th box. Now, this has the Ludo is a watered down version of this complex game. In this game, you not only had to, strategize while playing, you also had to do parallel thinking, because you are 1 against 3. 3 are your opponents. And when you are playing this, there is a lot of, complex thinking that has to go through one person's mind. Now, the watered down version is so simple, even an 80-year-old child can play. But the original version required at least some mental maturity.
Did these games have, like a lot of these games, were they in the older times, were they meant for, like a lot of these games, did they have a particular demographic in mind, or was it only for the young people, or was it for all ages, or did you come across games which were all encompassing, that all people of all age groups could play, or there were certain sections of the society, that maybe peasants or farmers, or like if there were certain classifications within the game also that you come across, like in a city or in a town?
No, I think the classification of that kind, we would be treading into unfamiliar waters. So doing that is not, I wouldn't, consider it in that way. Because most of these board games, for example, we have goats and tigers. Now it is so easy to draw, and all you have to do is you have to pick 3 pebbles that are large in size, and you have 16 smaller pebbles. The large ones become the tigers and the smaller one become the goats. And you can play it anywhere. You need not carry anything. So an ordinary peasant or somebody who is playing, we have found at Hampi, which is the seat of the Vijayanagar Empire. To this day, we have found auto rickshaw drivers playing the game in their spare time. We have found in the hinterland, we have found women passing time playing this game during monsoon. When it is raining and they cannot do anything, we have found them playing. And in South Canara, we have found the farm laborers playing Mankala game board, which is quite popular over there.
In Jaipur, we saw rickshaw pullers playing.
On a wintry morning when there were no customers. They were squatting beside the stand on the main road, on Mirza Ismail Road, on the main road. They were just squatting beside their rickshaws, huddled for warmth, and they were playing.
This is the Makali game? Which game are you playing?
Changabu. They call it Changabu. We call it as Chokabara.
We used to call it Changapo. Yeah.
Correct. It's also called Chalas.
Chalas. And we used to make it using the tamarind ka seeds, the
Exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. And so a lot of these games do not require very heavy infrastructure, or you could probably just make it using day-to-day materials, and the cost involved is not so prohibitive for anybody to start playing games.
What Raghu said on temple platforms in South India, many of the temple platforms you see the 14 pits of the Mankala game board gouged out.
Wow.
And when now that after 25 years of research, now Raghu and Dr. Dileep are so familiar with the topography of temples. Even if they are entering a new temple, which they are entering for the first time, as first-time visitors, they have a fair inkling that where they will find the game. It is usually on a raised platform, and it is or nearby a well, or at a vantage point where when you are sitting and playing, you are able to have either a 180-degree watch of the things, the surroundings, or almost a 360-degree watch of what's happening. So that is the vantage position where they sat and played. Because if, say, the guards are playing, they have to be on their watch.
Yes.
So they would put it in a vantage position. The game board would be positioned in or inscribed on a vantage position where, they just stretch their neck. They're able to see what's happening around. And also inside the temple where the priests played, that also we have a fair idea as to where exactly you will find the board games. It is usually at the side entrance, which is used for not for public, but only for the priests. And that side entrance is used for ferrying in the items that are required for worship, the daily worship, and usually where things are stored. And at that doorstep, you usually see these games.
And to answer your question, snakes and ladder we do not find on temple floors because it is a quite complex game. And it requires all those inscriptions, the good and bad karmas and all those things within the game board itself. So we do not find these board games on temple floors, and they required special material like either embroidered or painted game board, and the game pieces, of course, they can use anything, but the pattern itself was complex. So that was not played by a lot of people. Usually, people who had access to it, these game boards. And there are some religious game boards which are very particular to the communities. For example, there is a game board called Panchikarana. Panchikarana is a religious, it has got all religious motive and it was created for Madhva community. Madhva community. And it is even in that community, not many people know how to play it. It has a very complex game board, and the rules are very complex, and it narrates the theology of Madhva philosophy. So while playing, it has all the details. It is like you are teaching
Hmm.
a person the Madhva philosophy, you are using these board games. In
Okay.
fact, the Snakes and Ladder was started out. It started out like this, and it was started as Gyanbazi or Gyan Chopad. And the first of this Gyanbazi or Gyan Chopad we see in Jain tradition. So Jaina philosophy is taught in this
Okay.
game, and it looks similar to their Loka Purusha.
Hmm. Thankar.
Loka Purusha, and in that they have to traverse different boxes, and it teaches them the Jaina philosophy. And we think, we believe that the Sant Gyaneshwar in around 12th or 13th century, he made this Jaina game board into a the Paramapada or Mokshapata.
Okay.
Mokshapata with Hindu philosophy, the karma theory, Hindu karma
Okay.
into it, and it came down as Paramapada or different versions. And
Hmm.
later, the Westerners stripped it off from its
The snake and ladders.
karma theory and just made it into 1 to 100 snakes and ladders. That's all.
Wow. Yeah.
And
But
most
there
of
was.
the Jain and the Hindu snakes and ladders have 108 boxes.
Okay.
108 boxes, and and among the Sri Vaishnava community where they play, it is compared to the 108 Divya Deshams that they have to visit in their lifetime.
Okay. So are there some original versions of these available? Like from
They
the
are
12th, 13th?
they're in museums.
They're in museums.
There
Okay.
is a museum. There are a few beautiful specimens in Dalbhai Museum in Ahmedabad. The Jain ones, Lalbhai, sorry, Lalbhai Museum at Ahmedabad, and at the National Museum at New Delhi, and
Okay.
also there are a few nice specimens at the Government Museum at Egmore in Chennai.
Okay. Right. Any other cities that you found some of these games, like the Snakes and Ladders and the ancient versions of a lot of the contemporary games? Are there any other cities that you found some of these games coming
You're
from?
talking about temples, or you're talking about other general places?
Both.
Oh, so
Whichever.
almost every museum will have one or two specimens, and
Okay.
what happens is that over a period of time, they will have forgotten, what this game board is. Many times the labels are wrongly pasted, and many times what
Okay.
happens is the game board is different. The pawns that are placed on them are different. They don't know what is happening, and at many places, of course, at many places, proper research has been done. For example, at the City Palace Museum at Jaipur, it has been properly labeled, properly kept, and
Okay.
very beautifully displayed. There is a small Nizam's Museum at Hyderabad, and there also there are a couple of fantastic specimens, fitting that Nizam's stature. He was the world's richest man of his time. And he has a Pachisi game board there, which has, velvet embroidered with gold thread, and the pawns and the dice are made of gemstones, and they are studded with old Mughal meenakari with diamonds and rubies.
Okay.
And also, we found this in Bharat Kala Bhavan in Varanasi, then Kolhapur Palace Museum. A lot of museums, they do have some board games or game pawns.
Okay.
And they're quite interesting because sometimes we get only the game boards, or sometimes only the game pawns. They will be separated. In Mysore itself, in Jagannath Palace, there are a lot of board games because Mummadi Krishnaraj Vadayar was a gamer and he has invented a lot of board games, new board games. So we find the specimens of them painted in etched on copper plates, also ivory inlaid rosewood plates. In lot of varieties we get these board games, even carved ivory pieces, game pieces, very beautifully created board games and paraphernalia.
So you also mentioned, like it seems like a lot of the games that you come across, especially the ones that are in temple, they were designed in a way that it could be accessed by a lot of people. They were in community-based places, public places. Did you come across other games also that were in other locations within the city? So in terms of the purpose, that was a little different. Like what are some other places in a particular location that these games are?
Usually the ones that are inside the temple or where there is human habitation, there it is just a simple game that is being played for recreation. But
Okay.
we have found these on river banks, then
Okay.
at the travelers' resting places along the highways and river banks, where
Okay.
mostly it is used by people for gambling,
Acha.
because it is frowned upon at the temple if you gamble.
Hmm.
So when you look at when you find these places, when you find these games at places which are far away from the city, secluded,
Okay.
there you see that people use it for gambling.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was one person, Pandit Harikrishna Sharma. He lived in Pune, I suppose, about 150 years back. He has written a book, Krida Kaushalyam. He has written that,
Okay.
from which we have derived the name of our
Festival.
Krida Kaushalya. So in that, he refers to one particular game called Shmashana Shatakankari Krida, where that particular game is played only in the cremation grounds.
Oh.
And he specifically says that that game should not be played anywhere else, especially not within a house. So
Okay.
Not where householders reside.
Acha.
Not in the residences. Only in the Shmashana it can be played.
Cremation ground.
So
What is the nature of this game? Like, is there
it is similar to a hunt game.
okay.
Sorry, it's similar to a war game with a very complex game pattern, and it is played with pebbles
Okay.
or small stones.
Okay. But the objective might be something that gives you maybe some kind of a moral this at the time of
No,
loss. Is
I
that no?
think it is just when the cremation is happening, it involved a lot of time in olden
Okay.
days, and people who are not directly involved with the rituals
They can be
pass
engaged in
time,
this.
I think, I suppose.
Okay. So, but it also in a way very clearly shows that how death is not seen as a like it is part of life. Like if you can engage in games and fun activities during normal times, then even at the time of death, this is something that you can engage in. Speaks a lot about the kind of I think thinking that people had at that time, I guess.
In many communities in South
Mm.
India,
Mm.
after the marriage ceremonies are over, when the groom has tied the sacred thread around the bride's neck,
Mhm.
there is a ice-breaking session where games are played.
Okay. Yeah, even in Nord, they have some versions, not board games, but yeah, something which kind of establishes a competition between the bride and the groom, uh, which are, to find things that are lost in put a ring in milky water and one has to
Oh,
find
yes,
it.
yes.
So there are some of those games. Yeah. So, but there are games. There were activities that kind of were integrated with different stages of life, with different activities during the day-to-day thing. But one thing that I wanted to ask, which I thought about, was that what was the like, is there an average duration of some of these games? Do they last for how long do they last? Are they, what is maybe the shortest game that people can play and finish, or what is like a very long game that can engage for a very long time? Uh, did you did you come across some of these patterns also in these games?
No, what happens is,
Mm.
if you want to finish the game in a faster mode, all you have to do is you have to just follow the basic simple rules.
Okay.
If you want it for a longer time
Mm.
and you want to spend a lot of time,
Mm.
you just make the rules a little more complex.
Complex. Okay.
For example, the movement of the pawn will begin only with the throw of the dice, which shows 6. So you go
Okay.
on throwing the dice until you get a 6.
Mm.
So it's not easy to get a 6.
Yes.
So
That's
the game itself will not begin early.
Mm.
Right away, you're not beginning the game.
And one more thing to make to change the duration, either to make it faster, quicker, or to elongate it, just add or subtract the play pieces. If
Okay.
you are playing with 4 game pieces, it will take a little longer. Especially if you are playing it for as a gamble, they want it to get it quick. So they play with only one game counter. We have seen that also. And there are some instances where they have shortened the actual game board.
Okay.
The Pachisi game board, which has the 24 squares in one arm, they will cut it into 12 squares in one arm. So it will make the game quicker. So people are ingenious. Just they need what is the purpose they are playing for, and accordingly they can change the.
If it's entertainment, simple entertainment. If you want to spend time, you increase the number of pawns, you make the rules a little tougher. And if you want it just like that fast, you want to gamble, you reduce the number of pawns and also reduce the number of rules.
Okay.
See, a lot of people who are laborers, they have a lunch break of say 45 minutes, half an hour or 1 hour. They're going to have a quick lunch and they're going to engage in a quick game of gamble with one single pawn of challas.
Okay.
And it will move in about 7 to 8 minutes. The game is over.
Wow.
And one more thing, the game of Aduhuli or Tigers and Goats. When you are learning, you think over each and every move. But once you have mastered it, to make it more faster, it is made quick-paced by you have to move in lightning speed, just like lightning chess. So you should not think much. You just have to move. So it will get over within a couple of minutes. So all these variations you can bring in to a game.
And how many people typically, like, were there games which allowed for a very large number of participation, or were they mostly 2 to 4 people? Or
again, it is the game boards are so what you can say, they're easy to adopt. There is a game board called Vimana, which is usually played between 2 players.
Okay.
And there is also a recently added game board Dadu, which is a 2-player game. But in this Dadu is played in Ahmedabad by Dawoodi Bohra community, and this Vimana is played in the Komti Shetty community in Mysore. and they are similar the way they are played. These two-player game is made into a two-team game. So
Okay.
when there is a family gathering, say for some celebration or a festival, so whole family gathers. So they make two teams out of this group, and these groups play, and it is such a cacophony and fun and a lot of shouting and swearing. Everything happens, and everyone is involved in the game. And
Okay.
one by one, they take turn to throw the dice and
That's
play, and a lot of fun you can have. And that's what I said. The game boards are easy to adopt. Whether
okay.
you can make it a two-player game or a multiple-player game,
Team.
it completely depends on you.
Wow. And this is a game that has been there for a long time. You recently
Yes,
found it.
yes.
Okay.
Dadu, in fact, it was being played since a couple of 100 years in Ahmedabad, and it has been traced back to Yemen, Egypt, all the way
Okay.
there.
And the Daudipura community is believed to have come from Yemen to India.
Okay. So
So
probably
the
the game
game
traveled
came-
with them.
Yes, the game traveled with them.
Okay. The thing I wanted to ask was that you mentioned that in some, like for example in Hyderabad you found games which were basically customized for the for the Nizams, and then there are some games that are found in temples. But traditionally, who were the patrons of these games, or who supported development of these games? Other than the kings, were there people from different other parts of the society who also indulged in creating games or in promoting these games from different parts of the country? If you had come across any such insights.
I think it is because most of these board games are, handmade and very finely crafted, especially the older ones. So it is probably the person who was financially well off could have afforded that.
Okay.
So there's no doubt about that.
Mhm.
Because most of the board games, what you see, the earlier ones, if they are not in the royal collection or if they are not in a royal museum and they are in the public realm, either it must have come from some royal collection, or it could be that because there is multiplicity and there are multiple similar game boards with high quality of embroidery and then very fine pieces in ivory. Looks like even the person who could afford it, the rich people of the bygone time, must have got them crafted. And what you see in today, the common person is trying to ape the film actors, their style of dressing, their style of haircut and all. When you look at the old Mysuru area and the houses even today, they are a slice of the royalty that existed here. Similar kind of furniture, similar kind of saris you find, similar kind of game boards. What was in the palace, you find it in houses. And architecture is also similar. So they were, looks like people were aping what was the style, what style was
Royalty.
vogue by the high and mighty. That was, copied by the ordinary citizens who could afford it.
And one more thing is the game board of Mankala, we call it as Aliguli Mane, Chennemane, Palanguli. These were given as bridal trousseau along when the bride went from her family to the husband's family. So almost every household had them because their mother brought it home, and as kids they played. And when the girl is getting married, she will take that a new board game to her husband's place. So such a thing happened. And one very interesting thing in a place called Navalgunda near Hubli, Dharwad area. That Navalgund has a pitloom weaving of jamkhanas. And these jamkhanas are mostly woven by the girls. And they start when they are young. And by the time they are getting married, they will weave one beautiful jamkhana, which will have in the center a game board of pagade or pachisi, chaucer. And there will be 4 peacocks in between the quadrants, and it is called Char More Pagadi Jamkhana. And Navilu is Kannada. In Kannada, it is peacock. It's a peacock grove. That area, the entire area. That's why it is called Navilugunda. Navilugunda, a peacock grove. So peacock is the main motif. So even in the Jamkhana, they will weave a peacock, 4 peacock motif, and they take this as a bridal trousseau to her husband's house. Every girl who learns to weave this jamkhana. So this is one aspect. So each and every house will have this game board, and also that is pagade and aliguli mane. That these are complex game boards which have to be produced as artifact in a craft form. And these were available for all that is all strata. A very high priced game board will be bought by rich people, and a very basic one will be bought by people who can afford it. So if they cannot afford to buy it, the women folk would usually they embroider it, the game board. So they had every household had these game boards, and especially in the Iyengar community in South India, they play this game board of pagade in the house, and usually the husband and wife play, and they will be playing, and that helps them so much. They will not have any Alzheimer's or dementia because of these playing games. Daily, they will indulge in these game boards, and they live well into their 90s because of these game boards. And studies have been carried on the aspect, the good aspects of playing board games in European countries, and they say that playing game boards is very good, and it will ward off Alzheimer's and dementia, those mental illnesses.
No, that's true. I was reading that how it also helps in releasing endorphins, so it keeps you happy, keeps you agile. It definitely helps with memory.
Yes,
of course, it's very educational. So,
and especially when they are handling the pasas, the stick dice or cowrie shells, and they're throwing them on the ground and moving the pawns around the game board. That is very helpful. That is very, you can say,
agility,
medicinal.
Also sensory activity in terms of, like, I remember using the older cowrie shells to do this with 2 of them, and then also hand-eye coordination, of course. One thing that is very clearly, I think, that is coming out as a commentary on how city life or lifestyle in general in the time of these board games was so well integrated with the daily life. It was not a thing which was to be sought out separately like a video game, or you could use the same game pattern and you could make it complex, make it simpler. Husband wife can play it. People who are doing farm labor, they can do it. People who are traveling, they can play it. So there was this variation which all these games provided you in your daily activities. But did you also, other than these benefits which are indirect, just by playing, that you, for example, it can help you by not getting Alzheimer's or keep your memory sharp, were there more other functions that these games played in terms of, say, creating a community spirit bringing people together. Educational value you already talked about, like for example, the game of the early version of Snakes and Ladders was in a way also a moral game. But were there other benefits or other implied benefits that these games provided to people who played them or society at large?
Actually, we have not done research on that aspect.
Okay.
Our focus entirely was from the beginning. Our focus entirely was that we merge the board game tradition with the craft tradition.
Craft tradition. Okay.
And that is, we are on the lookout to see which craft will lend itself
Better
to
to
make a game board, to make a dice, to make a pawn. So that aspect we have not.
Okay.
But generally, we can say that these board games, they usually were helpful in communication and bringing people closer, and a family which played together stayed together, and the bond was more stronger in within the family. All those things, and it helped breaking ice, as in the case of the bride and groom playing, and one thing is pastime, but then as I said, the playing of pagade, it will help to keep our memory sharp and intellect sharper. So all those things are generally they are you can say bonuses of board games.
Any centers within India that you've seen that have been, like you mentioned about the one in Hubli, the one with the Peacock Grove, but are there other centers which have traditionally been continuously producing these games, and that you found in your research, and which games?
We have a place called Sawantwadi in Maharashtra, in Suttur district of Maharashtra, where game boards are produced. There is a particular game board played in the Konkan coast, that is the western coast of India, and it's called Tabla.
Tabla or Tabul Fale.
Tabul Fale. And it is mostly played by the Gowda Brahmin community, which speaks Konkani. And those big game boards are made there. And also card games are made at this place called Sawantwadi. And for a long time, Hoshiarpur in Punjab was a center where chess tables and chess pawns have been made, and even today it continues to be so. And they make very low priced game boards in wood boards as well as pawns. And another place is Saharanpur in Uttar Pradesh, where
close to us.
Yes, where these are made for export, and they are mostly chess. Earlier, we came to know that they used to make Mankala boards, but now we have again worked with the craftsmen where they have produced these Mankala game boards.
Yeah, particularly for Ganjifa, there are different craft centers. Like Mysuru was one, which is not there anymore. Again, Sawantwadi. Then in Raghurajpur, Orissa. In Bengal, West Bengal, Mushirabad. So Jaipur for ivory Ganjifa cards. So these were the centers which were earlier producing Ganjifa cards.
And also high quality game boards for European market made at Surat.
Amritsar.
At Surat, which had ivory inlay and sandalwood. And both the items are not found in Gujarat, the raw material. Neither ivory is found there nor sandalwood. It was actually brought from here. The products were made at Surat, and it is a kind of a unique inlay work known as Sadeli, and that was in high demand in Europe. But all those markets are now gone.
Completely gone. So, but it seems like a lot of these places were better suited in terms of the artisanal skills. And that
Mysore
especially,
itself was a very big center for making board games. The finest specimens are in the Victoria and Albert Museum. They were gifted by the 22nd Maharaja of Mysore during the period 1835 to 1881. The British actually take over the Mysore kingdom and they appoint commissioners. So every time the the parliament sat, the Maharaja of Mysore sent a representation along with gifts asking them to return the kingdom.
Okay.
And this entire collection, which belongs to Victoria and her successors, is housed at Victoria and Albert Museum. And they are the finest specimens intact from Mysore to be seen anywhere in the world.
Hasn't been a requisition made to bring some of it back, or
no, they were gifted, so
they were gifted.
Went with the official letters.
There is not a claim. Okay.
It's
In fact, now when you mentioned Gajifa, I remember. In fact, Yutika and I did a road trip or a journey around India, multiple smaller towns in 2015, and I remember talking to somebody in Mysore at that time who was a Ganjifa historian.
Raghupati Bhatt?
Probably, yes. And I'm forgetting the exact nature of. I think he used to keep these cards. He also had made a small museum, if I'm not wrong.
That's it.
Is that
That's him.
okay? Okay, all right.
It still works, but not in the Ganjifa format.
Not in the Ganjifa format. Okay.
In fact, Mr. Singh met him just today morning.
Is it okay? And in fact, during that journey, we also stopped in multiple smaller cities, and we used to identify places where we could read about some of the ancient or medieval history of those places. And I remember going to a very forlorn library in Kolhapur, and they had a older version of the gazetteer. And I think most of these gazetteers do have some sort of a record of the games that were being played. And I think in one of my diaries, I must have the various board games and a description of the games that were played in Kolhapur, Satara region. So I wonder if those were some of the sources that you probably also came across. But again, great detail.
If you go through the gazetteers, they will say that these games are gambles, and they will put different sections and
value judgments also. True.
It is just like the way they did away with the dancers of yore, the temple dancers who were branded tawaifs.
Yes,
just like that.
True. Great. My last two questions. One is very quickly, because our theme is my city, my fun, and the idea is to, if the youth were to organize a fun fair, did you come across any such games which were also part or center of any of these fairs or festivals that were played at one point of, like, maybe once a year or twice a year, which were like a center of a fair or a carnival?
No, we have only helped. One JSS institution is there. It's a very old, it's a 1,000-year-old monastery which runs about 200 educational institutions in and around Karnataka. And they have an annual fair that goes on for 7 days. And they have, we have trained the teachers, physical education teachers and the craft teachers. We have trained them as to how to make the games and play the games. And they in turn have introduced that in their schools. And once in a year, when the fair takes place, there are about 5 to 7 lakh visitors to the fair.
Wow.
It's a 5-day fair.
Where is it? Which city do you mention?
It's a small town on the banks of the river, tributary of river Kaveri, at a place called Suttur, which is roughly about 20 kilometers from Mysore.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And on all the 5 days, these board games are played there. Competitions are held. Championship is given.
Wow. Great.
So we have helped them to do this. Our team has
Design.
helped them to do this. And every couple of years, we do a refresher course because teachers will have retired, new teachers will come,
So
or
this,
somebody will have left the job.
okay.
So we did the refresher course last year.
Amazing. I had not heard about it, but this sounds so amazing. 5 to 7 lakh people is
They
quite
visit the
incredible.
fair.
Yes.
Maybe a few thousands will surely be interested.
Yes. Definitely. And my last question would be, any message that you would want to give, or any hope that you have for the work that you're doing, anything that you would like to change, or any uh, uh, like what you already doing, what could make it better? Is there something that you foresee in terms of reviving and preserving the games?
I think there are championships for Mankala and Tamil Nadu, especially at
Okay.
Chennai and Kanchipuram. There are championships, and
Okay.
also at a place called Dharwad in Karnataka, there is a championship for Pachisi. So we would like to see that in all cities across India.
True.
Local games and the championships associated with it.
In fact, I think that's the hope that we also hear from some of our participants, that how they can mainstream this idea of fun and not be.
For example, you are sitting in Dehradun and your state might be having some
games.
So a championship of that game.
Perfect.
Not necessarily it should be the same game across India.
True.
Because some game that is familiar here might not be familiar in Kashmir.
True. Exactly.
So we would want this kind of championship of traditional board games in the foreseeable future. Maybe that sounds interesting. If we find the right people and the right sponsors who could do that, we are more than willing to travel and assist them in doing it.
That's wonderful. I think
Without
that's
anything in return.
And one more thing is the research part of these board games. It is not being taken up seriously in India. Compare it to European countries, there are dedicated research and game researchers who are constantly doing work on this. And also every year there is one board game studies colloquium which happens in one European city. And all these game researchers gather in that 4 or 5 day colloquium. They present their papers, and it's a serious thing. Such a serious thing should happen about Indian board games, and researchers should take up study of board games in India.
And every time, we've been watching this for the last 10 years, 10, 15 years. Every time there is a game board colloquium, if there are about 20 speakers, there will be 5 who will be speaking on Indian board games.
But not from India.
But from India, we are about 6 of us who regularly includes me and Raghu. There's one Professor Palambal from Chennai who speaks. There's one Ramesh Gauri Raghavan from Mumbai who speaks.
Okay.
So we are half a dozen of people who regularly speak, and more than us, it is the Europeans who will have done research on Indian board games.
And the European universities are giving funds for serious research.
Grants and funds.
Grants and funds.
And they travel to India, and they will invariably travel to Mysuru. Any board game enthusiast from anywhere across the world, if they miss Mysore, they are missing a major chunk of the research.
And are they also trying to convert it into the digital games? Like, I'm assuming that a lot of this
already
must
done
be.
it.
I'm sure
and there are championships for that also.
Wow. But none of these have a IPR issue related with it.
They all manage it, but in India, no.
Wow.
And these are ancient games.
You cannot.
You cannot.
So, but you could do something similar in India and make it, and there would not be any copyright issue there. Like if
there will not be any copyright issues.
Yeah.
Unless
I
if
hope
it's
that
a new game board, new concept which has been done, and the person gets a
okay.
copyright of that. The older
And
ones, they don't have.
And the support for the colloquium, for example, like is it mostly is it supported by governments, or is it people from non-governmental space or
University and
universities?
self-funded.
And every year, one university of one European country, they host it. And
This year it was in Finland.
Finland.
Before this, it was in Turkey.
And
So, but if it was to be, yeah, please go ahead.
And these universities have huge repositories of game boards. Huge repositories.
In 2016, we went to Nuremberg. And the University of Nuremberg had 7,000 board games.
Oh, wow.
In their vaults. And they allowed us to see that.
7,000.
7,000.
How they accumulated it though? Like over time?
They have collected it after World War II. They have collected it very seriously.
Okay.
Not only old ones, the
new ones also.
New ones also.
And the latest one, which have won awards at the championships, have been bought and catalogued and kept there for future reference.
It shows the amount of seriousness that
they are very serious.
Yeah. But who would be best placed in India to do it? Like right now, these championship, are they government organized, like Makala and the other ones, or they are privately organized?
These are privately organized.
Privately organized. Wow. But the universities here, like, do you see any seeds that could be a precursor of something similar, or it's right now a very
they feel this is just a time pass. Indian universities, we have vice chancellors visiting us, we have director of National Institute of Advanced Studies visiting us. It's just a cursory interest, and after they leave the premises, they forget.
So I hope that through by manifesting some of these thoughts, we are able to reach out, and your voice can reach to some of the people who might. And there is a lot of value in what this can bring to people by documenting and by mainstreaming this idea of board games. And of course, it has a very central role to play in our daily lives. And research and knowledge about it first is the most important step in making it accessible to people. Like the things that you just talked about, I think I had not even heard about it. So many things, and there are so many people who probably don't realize the centrality of fun in the way that people used to have in the past. So I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation, and you took such candid time and shared so generously with us. And we'll be very indebted to you for taking this time out for us. And of course, we'll be in touch as we process this and as we reach out, and we'll be in touch also in understanding how else can we help in creating more action around what you're already doing. Thanks. So I'll wrap it up, and I'll thank you again for your time. And it was a wonderful conversation. I think the first of its kind in our podcast series, and with so much value. Thanks.
Thank you.